Welcome, everyone, to episode 4 of Otalku, where we are talking about the question of the classics of anime. What are the classics of anime, and what do classics really mean in this age of a highly fragmented otaku community, where we have a lot of youngsters and a lot of oldsters and a lot of folks with just very different definitions of what old means and what classic means. As usual, I have the whole crew here with me. I think that for the first time on Otaku, we have the whole crew.
It is.
Yes. So we have Matt Dixon from Life and Times of Anime.
Always a pleasure. Yes, my fedora is very stylish.
It is indeed. Also, Miniman is here.
Oh, of course, because I'm made of magic and made of laser beams.
There we go. And Rising Zan is here as well.
Charm as always while I drink my frap.
There we go. Gotta love the frap. And I will refrain from talking about the wonderful Admiral Akbar joke. Anyway, so there's we've all seen that one. So the question here is about the classics of anime. I mean, we talk a lot about, this is a classic, that is a classic, and it's a fairly ill-defined term, really. A lot of folks are just like, this is a show that was old and popular. But especially these days, I mean, especially with a lot of these younger fans who really only know, Bleach and Naruto and things like that. What is a classic of anime these days?
It's a very diluted term nowadays. It's very similar to the word love. It's just used at random. This is a classic, this is a classic. And the term instant classic is used more now than this is a classic. This will be an instant classic.
In fact, Anime News Network just called Princess Tutu a classic. It might be a fine show. I haven't seen it. I've heard great things about it. But that's not a classic. It came out like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. It's a diluted term. The other question, too, is classic, from which perspective? Western fans, Robotech is a classic to American fans.
So much.
And over in Japan, they just have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The thing is, the whole idea of just, a classic is something that's reasonably old and that everyone's seen. But I'm not going to call Bible Black a classic, because everyone's seen it and it's reasonably old.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
it's like probably the basic definition would be something that defines its genre, like Robotech. It's something that really says, this is what I am, watch me, kind of thing, So it's not exactly that it's old, it's just that it's a definite, because obviously it's a definition of its genre, and it's old. They're just a coincidental thing. It could be, you can have a modern classic if it's doing a definition, but then again you would use the term instant classic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was definitely... Oh, sorry, you want to go?
No, you first.
Alright then. It was definitely Robotech. Robotech was actually... It's a classic because it was an accidental experiment.
Yeah.
Robotech is the one and only anime where, we combined these 3 mecha anime together and kind of, sort of put them together with, Elmer's glue. But it works. It really works.
It really works.
It didn't look too bad, other than them kind of cutting out the small bits, though.
Mm-hmm.
But, it worked, and maybe this could be used again, but probably not, because then otaku are going to rave that, this didn't happen.
Yeah. We can't do that anymore because everyone, knows, knows what's going on. But actually, Robotech's a good example of something that, I totally agree it's a classic, but it wasn't really genre-defining in the sense... Well, it was kind of genre-defining for Americans because we hadn't seen mecha before.
Yeah.
Again,
then it's not a subjective thing, but a continental kind of thing. Yes.
Yeah. I think Cowboy Bebop fits in that for a lot of folks, that was kind of their first mature anime TV series.
Yeah, and yet, in Japan, they're like, what?
Right. Exactly. No one... Bebop just sort of disappeared in Japan.
Yeah.
So have a lot of anime, though, on Adult Swim.
Yeah.
Trigun, for example, I know I keep bringing that one up. There's a couple others, there's one robot one that's also pretty well known that I found out. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, though.
So yeah, so it's very different over here in the West than it is over there. And then of course, we have to talk about things. I mean, you have stuff like Gundam, where up until 15 years ago, most fans in America, weren't really familiar with Gundam. And thanks to Wing and Seed, that's changed to a great extent, and now folks know about Gundam. But how many anime fans, again, going back to that sort of, things a lot of folks have seen or genre defining or whatever, how many anime fans, at least in the West, have seen Gundam?
Like original Gundam or Gundam Gundam?
No, original Gundam.
I watched the first 9 episodes.
Yeah. I mean, and original Gundam absolutely changed anime, fundamentally.
Yeah.
But, no one has, not no one, but very few actual anime fans have seen it.
The thing is, I've never liked the whole term of, this series is a classic and all that sort of thing. Because the thing is, when people revel something as a classic, you always sort of, like, it sounds like, there is no flaws and it's perfect in every way. I mean, it's, that always annoys to some extent with some of them. Yeah, I know, I am happy with anyone calling Akira and Ghost in the Shell classics, because they're awesome in every way. Apart from pacing's a bit off. A lot of people are always annoyed with me when I say that in my reviews. Just the pacing's off in Ghost in the Shell. It is. But I mean, it's I don't know. Like the whole thing about what makes a classic is so annoying because it's just like everyone is throwing around the word classic as of late as well. It's just like. I could easily go, for the action genre, Phantom is a classic. It isn't, I understand that. It's just my favourite, it's just my bias state.
And that's, absolutely.
And, I understand, it won't have an impact on otaku culture, and it's probably going to fade into dust in the next few years or so, but, in the end...
It hasn't already.
It's true. Yeah. It's true, pretty much it has. Well, no, it's increased popularity by 400%. I've shown 4 people.
There we go. So that gets back to the question. So, and I mean, you're absolutely right that there's, classic certainly doesn't mean something it doesn't mean something that's just popular.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Brent, you said you were talking about no one's seen the original Gundam, but what a lot of the times is one way to look at a classic is it was extremely popular at its time, and it's something you need to see to have a true full opinion on this genre. Because a classic of British. Go ahead.
Okay, so something I want to bring up. Actually, if you watch Brent's primer, Gundam wasn't really well viewed, at least in the beginning. Am I right, Brent?
That is true.
Yeah, and also another good example for a classic is Nightmare Before Christmas. Everyone says Nightmare Before Christmas had good views, it had good box office smash and a classic, but that's not the truth. It did cut poorly, actually. For box office standards, actually. Well, and now it's mostly making its money through DVD releases and merchandising and Disneyland merch.
And I think to get to Matt's point, I think it has to be a certain popularity over time. Gundam was not popular when it first came out, but it built this huge following over the next decade or so.
Yeah. I mean, if we look at, I saw an interview with John Cleese a while ago. They was talking about 40 Towers and how it started really unpopular, like it was slaughtered. But it's become a classic now. Why has that come? And he said it's just because it took people time to get it. And when people take the time to get it, they seem to get it more than something that you just immediately know. And I think that's sort of what happens with otakuism. Like, Ghost in the Shell was influential. Came out in 1995. Boom. Wachowski Brothers Matrix 1998. Done. But, 1989, I think. 8-9. But the thing is that, Ghost in the Shell, it was revolutionary. And it was pretty damn popular on the Western side. But people still weren't giving it perfect reviews. I mean, it took a while. I mean, Empire, for example, when it came out, gave it 2 stars. Wow. And now they re-reviewed it about 2 years ago, 5 stars. Just shows that it just takes the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, one other point I wanted to make is the another way of considering a classic is it's something you kind of don't need to watch but should watch if you want to call yourself a big fan of, say, a genre. Like, for example, a classic of British comedy is Monty Python films.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, it's not everyone's cup of tea because I've shown a lot of people and they just don't get it.
Yeah.
Which again I find weird, but it's something you kind of should watch if you want to call yourself an aficionado or an expert, or at least just have a good opinion on British comedy, because it's something that's Monty Python was inspirational to a lot of people. You know, it fought against a lot of things. You know, it fought against getting banned across the world, kind of thing. You know, it's this thing that there's so much to learn from it that's why it can be considered a classic, because it just brought so much to the table compared to the stuff of its day or the stuff that now is doing. You know, a lot of the stuff like in British comedy, what it's doing now is just taking inspiration from older stuff. You know, it's not original, so a classic could be considered original, and it's ground shaking really. You know, in its field.
That's an excellent point. That it's not simply popularity. And it's not even really simply whether it defined the genre. It's that question of what it did, you know, in general. I mean, there's a lot about Macross is a good example. Macross is an absolute. It is a classic in a sense, but I mean, it didn't change anime. It didn't change mecha. But in order to understand how mecha evolved and to understand the direction of anime in general, Macross is a really important key in that puzzle. Actually, I think education is an important part of this. I mean, part of the idea of defining classics, I think, is almost more of an academic question. You know, where if you want to be well read, if you will, about a topic, you know, these are the 5 or 6 things you need to see. You know, but if you're a fan, whatever.
That's the thing. It's classics becomes.
I've always been
things. Classics again is split even further, not just continentally, but in the fact that it's academic and non-academic people. To us, again, we are technically academics in this field. You know, when we're looking at the genre-defying or what it did for the people, how popular is that kind of thing. To other people, a classic is just how good it was in your opinion. You know, to a reviewer, a classic can be something totally different to, say, an expert on anime or, you know, just any sort of film.
Yeah. I think Taxi Driver is a great example of that in film, where you know, Taxi Driver didn't really change anything, but it was this really, you know, big moment in film, and it's a really well-constructed film, and you know, it's a classic from the sense that if you want to understand, especially 70s film, that's a key. But it's not like that you create a new genre. I mean, you know, you go back to other things, and actually, I mean, this gets to the interesting question. I mean, some folks have talked about classics as being things like, I don't know, Lane. You know, can something be a classic and not have a lot of viewers?
I think the popularity has an effect, but it's not a huge effect. You know, it's sort of not 50%, but you know, it's a I don't know, 25% of what you'd factor into deciding if it was a classic or not, because it does obviously have some sort of effect. It can't have no viewers and be a classic.
Right. Yeah.
Hey guys, guess what I just did?
What?
I just went to dictionary.com, looked up classic. So classic edition, definition 1 of the first or highest quality class or rank, serving as the standard, model, or guide, basic, fundamental.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah. I like that term of serving as a guide. You know, when you go back and you watch Gundam, you watch Macross, it's such a clear dividing line, and it's one of the things. You know, if ever I get to that point where someone comes to me and says, "Please tell me how to become an otaku," you know, I'll be able to come back and say, "Okay, watch these shows from the '70s, watch Gundam, and watch the shows that came after."
You already did that, actually.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Remember on Adult Swim with sorry, no, it It was one of your your first Otaku 101 episode, where it's like, okay, if you want to be an Otaku, watch Trigun,
that's true.
blah, blah, blah.
That's true.
Yeah. I've always hated the idea that you have to watch all the classics. So I've always said, sort of, if you watch half of them and understand the impact of the other half, that's okay. Okay, I haven't seen Trigun and I haven't seen Akira out of the list you mentioned. Yeah. But do I understand the impact of Akira? Of course I do.
That's true.
Do I understand the impact of Trigun? I do. So therefore I can count. I hate this idea that if you don't see any of them, if you don't see all of them, you can't count as an otaku. I've always hate the idea that I've heard some people go around with. It's such a stupid idea, but some people say it. And it's annoying.
And also it's not watching all the classics. It's watching the classics of the. I'll say genre again. The genre you're interested in, because it's I like harem anime. Right, what's the classics of Gundam? Doesn't really fit. So you watch again. Classics are a guideline for otakus or anyone really. Just people that like that thing. You watch the classics of what you like. Of course, you dabble in other fields, and the best place to dabble in other fields is the classics.
True. Absolutely.
But from the get-go, you don't watch all the classics.
Yeah, honestly, my personal definition of a classic would be the best example of one of it has to be old. It has to be the best example of something. So, for example, I would say Macross would be the best.
Why does it have to be old to be the best example of it?
Well, I always disagree.
Maybe not
something new could be
maybe not necessarily
better,
old, but maybe nostalgic. Maybe that makes sense.
I guess
it's a very good point. I mean, one of the issues there is you can get a show that is perfectly emblematic of something, but that and is momentarily popular, but then doesn't last.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so an earlier show becomes Nadesco. I think is a great example of that. Martian Sensor Nadesco. At one point, I've actually seen in New Type Japan. At one point, the readers of New Type Japan voted that the best anime of all time. And these are the readers of New Type Japan. These are hardcore fans, and it's kind of dropped off the radar. And that was considered an absolute high watermark. I mean, I would say Nadesco is still sort of maybe a demi-classic in the sense that yes, it's important. It had a lot of fans, and I mean, Rory is a significant fan character, but it didn't exactly fit it. So it's one of the reasons why I think it's important for us to think about the classics and remember the classics, because it's easy to get caught up in what's popular right now and not go back and see those things that were defining of the medium.
Yeah, and another thing to factor into classics is it will be remembered. Even in 20 years there will still be some people talking about Monty Python. This is a downright obvious, So and that's one thing to think about. What would make a classic? What will be remembered? Because to move it to anime, because I shouldn't be talking about British comedy. Cowboy Bebop will be remembered. Ghost in the Shell will be remembered. We already know these are classics to us, but our children's children might not until someone else informs them of them, and that's another reason why it's a classic, because it will be remembered on and on and on.
I mean, the thing is, look at sort of Western anime. Our earliest sort of classic in the Western anime comes from the 70s, so it's still quite young to call something a classic. We can make terms of literary classics because literature has been around for hundreds of years. And with anime, especially in Western for Western otakus, it's hard to label something as a classic because it's still quite young. We can predict what will be a classic. Like I think Death Note is going to still be around. Everyone's going to still know of Death Note in 20 years. So I think Death Note is a modern classic or a possible classic.
Miniman, Death Note already has kind of a title. It's called cult classic because it's not the norm. You know how people would call Dragon Ball Z a classic. Well, obviously Death Note's a little bit different from Dragon Ball Z, so they call it a cult classic. Yeah. Because it's kind of like underground because of its material.
Well, a point on what Miniman said, it's actually quite ironic that you used the term literature, because there is no definition of literature. There is No, but it's like we're struggling to find the definition of classic, and there is no definition of what makes something literary.
Yeah.
It has words.
I'm going to vote
There
for
is
the
no
words
definition on
theory,
is it fiction, is it non-fiction, and
Yeah.
But I just thought that was kind of ironic that while we're struggling to define classic, we're using something that doesn't have a definition itself to define a classic.
Yeah.
That's because nothing has a definition when you talk about these. That's the only problem there. Like you talk about every time anyone. The reason that these discussions are thrown around after years is because there is no answer. You cannot answer it because there is no definition.
So much disagreement is the thing. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. But personally, for me, I would have two rules. I'm bringing it up again. It has to go through the test of time, and it has to be a good example of something, or like just be really, really good.
Yeah.
So here's an example. Here's something I thought of really hard last night. What makes Akira a classic? Is it because it was the first big movie anime? Is it because of the Kaneda thing? Is it because it's gorgeous, the gorgeous graphics at the time?
Yeah.
It's pretty
what
much
was
because
it?
it's the first time that the Western world just went anime.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what brought it over.
Well-
because this is the time that Speed Racer had started to dominate. So then this is the first time people went, look at this compared to Speed Racer.
And getting back to the Continental thing, there are really two answers to that. Why was it popular in Japan, and then why was it popular in the West? I mean, it was popular in Japan because it hit on a lot of cultural changes that were going on. It painted this picture of a Japanese decadence that had kind of, gone too far. It really spoke to the youth culture. It really fit its time very well, and did so in a really beautiful and visually arresting way, and in a way that you can actually think about it. In the West, it was cartoon with guts. Oh my gosh, there's blood, and yet there's also stuff to think about. And so Akira had this very different reaction over here, and Akira played a lot of art houses. It was this really underground thing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so Akira had that very different effect on media, that it opened a lot of folks' eyes to this is what animation could do. I mean, I know a lot of folks my age who got into anime because they saw Akira at some, college screening, in 1990. And it completely changed their views on what was possible in animation and film, frankly. I mean, a lot of the effects in Akira were not possible in live action film at that point. So, that was that realization that, wow, you can do all this in animation and it looks like it's part of what's going on. It doesn't look like a cheesy effect. So it's an interesting point. I mean, Akira is absolutely a classic in every sense, but for very different reasons in different cultures.
Yeah.
It's just just to bring up the point of being remembered again. Akira again is something that we're still talking about today. Obviously. Because we're talking about it now. Being remembered is a huge factor. The more we talk about it, the more this just is being made finite in my mind that if it's going to be remembered is one of the massive definitions for why it's a classic. And I am actually going to say something I haven't already said in a second. It's bringing up the thing about it being a diluted term now. Classic is now different because saying something is a classic or an instant classic, as they call it now, instead of meaning this is amazing and beautiful and will be remembered, it means we have nothing to say about this anymore. Classic is now almost a derogatory term. If you look into it, because what you see in a review now when it says this will be an instant classic, it really means you have nothing to say about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's absolutely. Well, and then we can get into the whole, reviews are kind of vapid in general anyway. But yes.
Yeah. Let's just get one thing straight, ladies and gentlemen, on the chat. And for those of you watching in the future, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as an insta classic. There are such things as a demi classic. I like what Brent said with a demi classic or a semi classic. That works. I really like that term. But there is no such thing as an insta classic. They need to go through the test of time before they can become a classic.
People are calling, Lucky Star an instant classic. I love Lucky Star, but there is no way I'm going to label that a classic until a decade from now.
Yeah,
All right,
again,
yeah.
because it's about the remembering thing. Something that needs time to prove it's a classic can't be referred to as instant. It's like saying, I don't know, an instant pizza is a really
Classic.
long dish to cook.
Yeah.
It's a juxtaposition of terms.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't work. So no, go ahead, Miniman.
I mean, the thing is, like, again, just to, like, sort of dispel the whole idea of, you know, when people watch it immediately it becomes a classic. Look at Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane bombed when it came out.
Yeah.
Absolutely bombed.
Yep.
Horrifically.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it started getting noticed about 10 years later.
Yeah.
And now we hail it as the film. The film.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that, you know, we can't... I mean, look at some of the stuff now. Maybe, like, some of the stuff we hate now may suddenly become a classic at some point. And, you know, maybe it just slips through our fingers. I mean...
Absolutely.
I mean, for example, Karen no Kyokai. I always believe it deserves to be a classic. I always believe it got it right. It's not popular now, but I am determinedly sure that someday word's going to get around about that series for its quality.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it's gonna. I always believe that it's gonna get there at some point.
Yeah. Well, and it's certainly very popular over in Japan. So hopefully it'll find its market in the West. So that opens up the question: what are the classics of anime?
Well, we've mentioned a few, obviously, that you know, it wouldn't take us to say that it's a classic to agree that it's a classic.
Yeah.
You know, Akira, Gundam, not Gundam, sorry, Macross. Though the original Gundam could be considered a classic.
Oh yeah.
Those are the things we've listed so far.
Yeah.
But obviously, the classics do a lot of them come from the 70s of anime, that is.
Yep.
But could we consider the first full-length anime film a classic? Was it a classic? Because it was the first, and obviously people are still talking about it, so it's being remembered as the first. But is it a classic? Is it not just the first?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's a different kind of guideline. Because a classic, yes, is a guideline. I really like that idea of it being something to work from. But being the first kind of transcends classicalness.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
Because it was the first. It is the ultimate guideline.
Yeah.
Because with the first one, it's kind of either, you know, a lot of it's don't do this. And then some of it's do this. You know, because there are stuff from the first full-length anime feature we should learn from.
Yeah.
Some things we shouldn't do, some things we should do. So it's kind of bigger than a classic, really.
That's very
true.
So
where did classics start? Because, you know, again, like the second and third, are they classics or are they not just like the first? Are they, you know, the first few?
The best,
where do classics begin?
Best example for that is to look at what classics do people say about Studio Ghibli. Because the ones that people always say are the classics of Studio Ghibli are Mononoke and Spirited Away. Because Spirited Away got that push in the West, and Mononoke is the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I've always believed in my heart after watching it yesterday. So I believed for one day that Laputa, the first one, is the best. Because it defines...
Laputa is the best.
It defines Ghibli. But it's not remembered. People aren't going to remember that as much as Mononoke and things, because it's the push that they got.
And also, I mean, you know, to be fair, you know, Mononoke is a great example of that, where Mononoke is a much more nuanced film, because, you know, Miyazaki by that point had really evolved his views on the environment and human relations and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, Castle in the Sky is a great adventure film, but it doesn't have... You know, but you know, with Mononoke, he was able to really move forward, and you know, and I have nothing against Castle in the Sky because that's where he was at the time. He made a great film.
He was in Laputa?
Say what?
He was in Laputa? He said he was there at the time.
No, I mean, Laputa is what Miyazaki could make at the time.
Yeah.
That's where he was as a creator. That's what I meant. Yeah, sorry.
Well, no, I mean, think about it. I mean, if, say the first Ghibli film he did was a Mononoke-esque thing. With
well,
budget
it was
that he had
Nausicaa.
with Laputa.
Well, no,
and then he did... and he did Laputa at the time of Mononoke, we'd be praising Laputa.
Well, see,
Right.
I don't agree with that. Because I think Princess Mononoke has far more depth than Castle in the Sky does. That's
It
the
does,
thing.
of course.
Yeah.
Mentioning Ghibli is a good point to bring this in as well.
Yeah.
But the one thing we haven't considered so far is children's classics. They're a big factor because we've got our classics and then children's classics. The things you will still show your children when you are, it's because that's a big kind of classic because people are still showing their kids Little Mermaid, Sleeping Beauty. Well, not Sleeping Beauty. That was a terrible film. Beauty and the Beast is what I was thinking of. I always get them mixed up. I prefer Beauty and the Beast. Anyway, but all the older Disney films from my youth and Brent, some of your youth as well.
Yeah.
Back when dinosaurs were on
I'm
the earth.
useful as well.
Look at my
We
friend.
had to make movies with sticks.
Yeah, I'm gonna die in D&D now. I'm dead in D&D now. Anyway, we're still showing those things, and again, that's the talking about being remembered. But Ghibli has done children's classics.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But with Ghibli, again, it's sort of a transcendence from children's classics to both.
Yeah.
But it's like, will we still be showing our kids Ponyo? I know I will be. I mean, that was just my opinion. I love Ponyo. I think it's a brilliant film for kids. But is it, if you was given... that's slang. You were given Sleeping Beauty or Ponyo, what are you going to show your kids?
Ponyo.
Well, I'd show Sleeping Beauty because it teaches them more. Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast. Sorry, I keep saying
You keep mixing
Beauty
that
and
up.
Beauty and the Beast teaches children more than what Ponyo does.
Yeah.
So again, it's another factor of classics. Classics have just got so many branches: children's classics, academic classics, just general classics. It's got so many. Why do I want to say nuances? Just different places to go with classics, and Ghibli's a good benchmark for that for children's classics and adult classics, I guess.
Yeah.
Or teenage
the worst.
classics.
I'd be the worst parent ever because I'd make my children watch stuff in the order I watched it. Just watch out for light. You're 6.
11-year-olds, my children are watching Outlaw Star. Simple as that. I did it. They will.
Watching Inazuma 11, I know that already. I will be dubbing that stuff, and they'll be watching it.
Well, and it's an excellent point. I mean, there are also the classics that sort of almost transcend their medium.
Yeah.
I think Disney's a great example. Say what you will about Snow White, that is considered a great film. Beyond the animation thing. And it's a classic. I mean, it changed a lot of. It was the Gundam of cartoons back then, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And that's great and fine. It sits in a different place, much like Ghibli films. I mean, one of the reasons why there are some folks who aren't crazy about Ghibli films, and that's fine. But you have to understand the fact that Ghibli films have managed to hit this amazing spot where almost anyone can watch a Ghibli film. You can sit an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old down in front of My Neighbor Totoro, and they'll love it.
And they will get some out of it, yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Yeah. I've always had problems with people calling Ghibli films kids' films.
Yeah.
John Lasseter was actually once asked by this day because he was once actually quite offended on a radio show. They said, "Why do you only make kids' films?" He said, "I make films for everyone and a family. I don't make films for kids."
Yeah.
And you can see that John Lasseter and Miyazaki, while there are differences in how they do things, are rather similar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you've ever seen interviews with them and stuff, they pretty much answer the same things.
Yeah.
And the thing is that that with that whole thing, Ghibli films are meant for everyone, and I'd never liked the idea of a children's classic. I always believed that if you've got a children's classic, surely it'd be so. I know the idea that I've always believed a classic, apart from what people who are underage to watch it, like stuff like Akira and stuff, is to be able to be appreciated by everyone and above.
Yeah. That's
to be a classic. Like, it shouldn't just count out an age group. That's what I usually have a problem with.
That's a very good point. I mean, there are a lot of things that folks fall in love with, but there's this really small, hardcore fan. This is the cult classic idea. You can have something that a very small group of folks enjoy, but to be a true classic, it needs to be something that has sort of that broad appeal, I think.
Yeah.
On some
It's interesting you mentioned Snow White, Brent, because that did transcend its medium in the fact that people are still doing stuff about Snow White today. To give an example, Snow White, and this is a big transition of mediums, a heavy metal band, a German heavy metal band did a song about Snow White called Son, Sonee, Rammstein. They did a song about Snow White, and that's just another thing to show that this thing is still being talked about today, still being, considered something worthwhile, something interesting, and by the way, the Rammstein video for Son, the music video is absolutely awesome, and it's all about Snow White. It's just, that's another thing that makes it classic, if it can move on to other stuff that's so apart from it, because Snow White is nothing like heavy metal. But there was a song.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, if it pushes itself into general culture, then you've definitely got a classic there. I mean, if we just look at, for example, the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, no one would know that if Mary Poppins hadn't pushed itself into culture as it had. And even with Snow White, if someone told me the story of Snow White and I'd never seen the film, I would not know it now, and I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about, Matthew Dixon? But no, I understand Snow White because I've seen the film, and it's transcended into our culture.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And sometimes maybe that's sort of what people try and think is a classic, something that transcends itself into a certain cultural paradigm, as it were, of otakuism.
Yeah. Now, and obviously, some of these are a little different because Snow White, it goes back way before Disney.
Obviously, it was a children's fairy tale.
Right.
But that's the point. If someone told me the children's fairy tale, because I knew it was a children's fairy tale, but if someone told me that, I would not know it now.
Exactly. Yeah. It would have vanished. But Snow White makes it last, and that the Disney film makes it last. That's that's the remarkable thing. Toy Story, I think, is a great example. That just sort of stuck in people's brains for a very long time, and it like you say, it escaped into pop culture.
I think that's an odd kind of kids classic though, with because I would still define it as a kids classic, Toy Story.
Yeah.
But it's more like because I went to see Toy Story 3 at the cinema, and it wasn't just kids there. There was adults, and I can guarantee that those adults saw Toy Story 1 and 2 when they were younger and loved it. That's a kids' classic that, the adults still love. The adults that watched it still watch it and think, yeah, this is awesome.
Well, I think
I'm going to show my kids.
I think Toy Story is one of those Ghibli-style movies. I watched Toy Story when I was an adult, and I loved it.
Yeah. I've never liked calling Toy Story a kids' classic, because the original one has some scenes that are so dark and so only until when I was 9, I was still having some fears of some scenes of Toy Story 1. Like, there are some really freaky scenes in that.
The bully's house, with the messed up toys, terrifying stuff.
Yes. I mean, it further proves that, again, it's not a case of it's for kids, it's just pushed itself into a paradigm.
Yeah, the better definition would be family movie, definitely, because kids, when you think kids movie, you think characters. When you think family movie, you think something for everyone, and that's exactly what Toy Story is. That's what the Miyazaki movies are. That's exactly what they are. They're family movies because they're for all ages. An adult could watch it, your child could watch it, even grandpa could watch it.
Yeah,
exactly. That's bringing another. That's just proving the fact that classical is a massive term.
Yeah.
Because we're bringing in another tree, family classics.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's just another way to go down on how to define a classic.
Yeah. And, getting back to the difficulty of terms, I've always disliked the idea of a family movie, because it usually means kids movie.
That's what it was gonna. It still seems
frustrating.
The kids are the ones that are watching it, but the adults get something from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's like the whole film noir thing. When people were making film noir films, they did not know it was film noir. Film noir wasn't an existent term until 40 years after, from a French critic.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it was more that they were influenced by a thing. It's not that we're going to make a film noir film. It was let's make a film that's been influenced by this idea.
Yeah, and I remember seeing an interview with Yoshiyuki Tomino, creator of Gundam, on one of his later shows, where he said, our our goal in this series is nothing less than the complete reinvention of the mecha genre. That show was Overman King Gainer, which came out, folks watched it, said that was cute, and it completely died. It's not a classic or anything in any way, shape, or form. I watched it and I thought it has its good points. But it's just, again, sometimes you can set out to make a classic, and it just doesn't happen.
That's the thing. I don't think anyone that's ever set out to make a classic has made a classic. Classics are accidental. Well, in a way, obviously, it's like Toy Story. They did plan for it to be a hit, but it was an accidental classic. It was classics are never intended. It's people that think I'm going to make a classic are the people that don't use inspiration. The people that say I'm going to reinvent this genre. I'm going to do something new. That's not how you make a classic. You take inspiration from the older stuff, from the classics, and add a modernity to it.
Yes.
So it becomes sort of a modern classic, because then it will be remembered on from this point, and it will just further on the classics of what it was inspired by.
Yeah.
Because, say, example, Snow White was inspired by White Snow. I don't know. But, the Snow White becomes a classic of that time, and then White Snow becomes an even more of a classic because it inspired Snow White, It furthers on the classic like a link, really.
Right. And you look back at the classics of anime, that's exactly how that happened. Gundam took the cheesy giant robot shows and said, let's make it serious. Macross took that and said, let's do a romance story, an actual complex, romantic relational story. Cowboy Bebop said, let's look at American film and let's apply those lessons to anime and make, little episodes that feel like films. That's how it works. And Bebop is a great example of something that was an experiment. It was, hey, let's try this, and they threw it together and it worked, extremely well.
That's a bit, Miniman, do you want to?
Yeah, there's a saying I once heard, which was, the further you strive for perfection, the more you cloud yourself from it. And that's often the case with these things. If you try and say, we are going to make a classic, we are going to do this, we will make one, you're not going to make a classic.
Right.
Because you're too much trying to create the perfect classic by looking at other things. Sometimes you just have to sort of, the whole point of classics is they do just happen.
Yeah.
I mean, even with the cult classics, forgive me, but it's my area expertise. Gaming, for example. Mirror's Edge. That has gone down as one of the classic experiments of gaming.
Yeah.
And yet, when it came out, everyone was just like, wait, they just wanted to make a first-person free-running game. See what happened.
And it tanked.
And it tanked.
Mirror's Edge did pants because it just did the same thing for 3 hours, basically.
But as it's gone on...
But it was classical in its experimental form.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
People have found people have found more inspiration from it, and people have sort of... And as I've gone on and looked at, sort of new games that are coming out, people are often saying, wow, that's like Mirror's Edge mixed with...
There we go.
Exactly, then, that's the thing what we were talking about, the first. It's not a classic, it transcends a classic in the fact that it's the first of it. There are things you don't do, and there are things you do from this.
And Slither asks the question, what do we say about Evangelion? That's an interesting one.
I have to say something I'll say something without any hate.
Yeah.
So I do hate, though. Evangelion. I think it was going one direction at first, and it was actually a pretty good direction, you know? Problem is, the main problem was the writer then was hit with huge depression, and the problem was he was a bit immature to let that affect his work. Well, and that he's like, no, I'm going to make it this way now, and that should never be done, I'd say.
But the question is it a classic?
Yeah, it is a classic because of what it was first going to, and then it went in that wrong direction.
Actually, I disagree there. I think it's a classic partly because of that change in direction. I think that the instrumentality episodes were so shocking and caused so much furor and debate. I think if Evangelion had ended the way it had planned to, it would have been a popular, but it would have had its day in the sun. I think because it went so, it went in such a different direction, it's one of the reasons why it's become so incredibly popular. I mean, it's fueled so much frickin' debate amongst otaku.
I still haven't seen it, mostly because I just want to avoid all the debate half the time. Like everyone's just like this is, everyone's like arguing this is better than the film or that sort of thing, and it just sometimes really annoys me. Like, I mean, I personally think, from what I've heard, I haven't seen them, but from what I've heard, the most deserving to be a classic is the rebuild films. Like, people are always going to go back to the original Evangelion, and the problem is that, I mean, I know a lot of reviewers, and stuff like Cowboy Bebop and Evangelion, they understand that they're classics. They're still not necessarily well reviewed.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, I have several friends who are reviewers, and most of them, on average, are giving stuff like Cowboy Bebop 3.5 stars out of 5. And but it doesn't mean it's any less of a classic for what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, but the problem is, you say the whole idea of just shocking people of, whoa, but I don't know, I mean, I love Elfen Lied, but I'm not going to call the first scene a classic as much as it is the most disturbing thing I saw when I was 13 and had my first anime.
Well, Miniman, you made a point there that, again, just about the remembering thing. You said, your reviewer friends are giving it 3.5. They're still reviewing it now.
Yeah,
it came out a long time ago, and they're still reviewing it. That's what makes it a classic, that people feel it still needs to be reviewed over and over and over again.
And it's the same thing with Eva. Folks are still going back to that original series and reviewing it. And I think, and I've gone on record for saying that, I think the instrumentality episodes are brilliant, works of animation and exactly the wrong ending for that series. And like we said, they didn't intend to go in exactly that direction, but it's just, it happened to turn into a classic in a lot of ways.
Well, then we come into the side of the classically bad, a bad classic, because there, you wouldn't call it a classic, obviously, you just call it a really, really bad film. But you do have the anti-classics, I guess we'll call them, that are still being talked about today.
MD guys.
You're still saying they're something to learn from, and they're still being remembered. And that, again, just another treat. The anti-classics of classics, the things that are still being remembered for being bad.
Look in film, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. People are still reviewing that.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's a giant shark fights a giant octopus. What more do you want?
Except
that's
the fight
the
scene.
instant classic.
I mean, I think...
but the fight scene is one, 10-second bit, and they reverse it to make the octopus like he's hitting the shark, and the shark... like hitting the octopus, and you can so tell. It's brilliant.
I think actually Fist of the North Star kind of fits into there. I mean, it's not the Fist of the North Star is an absolutely terrible thing, but it's this cheesy, goofy, over the top.
Yeah, it is
thing. And folks love it partly because of that, because it is this very repetitive, ridiculous thing.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to a joke earlier. People are still remembering Bible Black. Let's think about that.
Yeah.
Bible Black is literally a classic. In the same way that a Rick Roll is a classic thing.
Yeah.
It's there because people are joking about it, and therefore it's almost a classic in itself because it's a staple in culture of our paradigm, as it were.
Exactly.
In the Otalku paradigm, Bible Black and the Blue Girl are still classics in their own unique way.
Absolutely. Heck, Legend of the Overfiend. I mean, that's a great example of stuff that people... I mean, that was in the book by Susan Napier. A professor wrote in her book about Legend of the Overfiend. That says a lot about a lot of these things. So...
Yeah. Well, that one thing that's pretty obvious... Sorry, there was an echo. There is one thing that's pretty obvious. It's a lot easier to make an anti-classic than to make a classic. There are you compare the list of classics to anti-classics. There's a big list of anti-classics. But
the thing is, anti-classics are so much easier to die out. That's the thing. Like, an anti-classic will die out. I actually think that it's easier to make an anti-classic for a time, and then it's going to
because
die out.
then when the new anti-classic, the new bad thing, because anti-classics, they do die out because like Fist of the North Star, for example, something else that does pretty much the same things wrong, but it's modern. It's this modern thing, so it's a better benchmark for future films, or future animations, because the technology is different.
Well, and Matt brings up the point. Then you have those works that sort of sit in the middle, like The Evil Dead in films, where it's a ridiculous, cheesy, over the top thing, but it's also a very well constructed movie.
Yeah, it is. It's really, really good.
Yep. Although I do get angered when people say Evil Dead zombies are zombies. They're not zombies, they're possessed.
Exactly. Very true.
But that's the thing about Evil Dead. It's an odd anti-classic. Classic anti-classic is the only way you could really call it. The classic anti-classic.
Maybe a counter anti-classic.
The first film was remade, but as a sequel. I think it's Evil Dead. Is it Evil Dead 2?
It's Evil Dead 2, yes.
It's just a remake of Evil Dead 1. Mm-hmm. So that really does sit in its own limbo of classic anti-classic, classic anti-classic.
Yeah.
Because it was redone, and when you review Evil Dead 1, you kind of have to review Evil Dead 2 at the same time. Mm-hmm. Because it's the same film. And I don't know which one it was, but one of them was, a lot scarier than the second one. Or the other one. The one was kind of comical, and the other one was scarier.
Yeah, the first one is more comedy. The other one is more of a straight horror movie.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is, and it's part of why the reviews get interesting. Yeah, I really like the comedy of the original Evil Dead. It's part of its charm. And it's one of those things that I think it gets lost in the second. The second film becomes sort of a another bloody slasher film.
Actually, going back to the idea of a classic, something that still causes debate. Digital Buck is a very good point. Do you think Pants in Stocking will ever become a classic?
Interesting.
I'll say it's become an anti-classic.
I'm going to say it's become an anti-classic for you. It's a 50-50 anime. It's an anime which half love, half hate. It's like how Marmite is a classic food. People. Well, again, it's got so much debate.
Like Evil Dead. Like in Evil Dead, it's a classic anti-classic.
Yeah, it is.
It's basically a tongue twister. It is. It's I guess the best way to put it would be a limbo classic. We're just inventing new terms. I've done it twice.
Why not?
It's
sort of a limbo classic because it's halfway. It's 50-50 in opinions and popularity, will it be remembered, and what kind of benchmark it is.
High School of the Dead.
Yeah.
Definitely.
High School of the Dead is going to be classic for what you did wrong.
I think that'll be more of an anti-classic.
Take something so good and do it wrong. I mean, the thing is, though, that what's interesting to me about this is a lot of people sometimes say, like, what about classic scenes? Can you get classic scenes out of bad things? For example,
you could, actually.
The very first scene of Origins Spirits of the Past is, I think, one of the finest bits of anime in history. Just the music, the atmosphere. It's no dialogue, just you just see the destruction that these trees are doing to the moon.
Actually,
in terms of classic scenes, I would love to bring something up.
Sure.
Surprisingly, Bleach. This is back in like the third arc where I was like pulling out my hair like, God, get better, this is awful. I was watching the anime, mind you. And we get to the end of the third arc, and you know what? I think I'll just spoil a little bit. Basically, the girl is being kidnapped, but she can say goodbye to one last person, and she says it to the boy, Ichigo, and just what she says was so touching, especially since this girl's the ditz of the series, and what she said to him, and mind you, he was unconscious. And just she basically confessed to this to him while he was unconscious, and just what she said to him. I cried at the end, and this is just like a monologue, and it was just so beautiful. And this is like from Tite Kubo we're talking about here. Why say can't write himself out of a paper bag, but he like I don't know if it like if his wife came up with this or something. If he has a wife. But this line, I cry. I love it every time it's said.
It's one of the
just
great
so
quotes, really.
amazing. Yes, this monologue should be performed.
Well, one thing we need to consider as well is personal classics.
True.
What is a classic
Yes.
to you?
Yeah.
Like to me, something I know I'm going to be remembering for a very long time. Well, two things: Outlaw Star and To Army Jukes and No Index, because they're to me they're very important. They're something I'm going to remember forever. So they're a personal classic. But also, it was interesting you mentioned High School of the Dead, because that's again a very weird classic because it has a very, very good storyline that people will probably remember. You know, people that watch it will remember it for its good storyline.
Yeah.
Well, I say the
And
good
then
starting
the
storyline.
perverts or anyone will remember it for well, no, if you watched it all, High School of the Dead has an amazing story all the way to the end.
I've watched it all. I
It's a
just find the
beautiful story.
pacing's a bit off as it goes on.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as I get out of the school, that's really pissed me off, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's like, you're out of school! Slow!
Yeah, true.
it will be an anti-classic at the same time for its for what it did wrong. The constant fan service.
The thing is, the High School of the Dead, talking about scenes, there's one scene which always stick in my head for being, it's basically like the Orihime scene, but what you did wrong. As in literally, it was like, it was the
slow-mo bullet
great
scene?
moment. And then just a tiny bit before that, it's
okay.
it's the moment that you get in all these zombie films in which it's the last stand of these people. They've run out of hope and there's nothing left for them. And basically, one of the most touching lines is the main guy grabs the girl and just says, "Look, if we're going together." And then suddenly, he grabs a sniper rifle. Action, boom.
Yeah.
And I was just like, no, end it there.
Yeah, exactly.
Die.
That's exactly.
Then I will like you.
Another point on High School of the Dead as well is when you mentioned classical scenes. Classical, you can have obviously classical episodes as well, like the or arcs. The arc in High School of the Dead that's all about the main character and the kendo girl. I think it's 2 episodes. They're a classic. They will be remembered as probably the best episodes of the for the people that care about story. So the 4 of us, that is a classic because it's probably where the story in High School of the Dead takes the forefront, takes the most important part, because in those 2 episodes, there's one fan service scene, well, two. One at the beginning of the episode, and one at the end of that arc. So it's kind of a good transition. Start on a bit of fan service, then get rid of the fan service, then bring it back with fan service. So you know the arc has ended. So the good times are gone, it's back to boobs.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, I sort of disagree. For me, yes, I remember some of the story, and I do agree that those episodes had the best story. But the episode I always remember of High School is the first episode for that method of storytelling.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Because for me, the storytelling method stands out much more. Like Angel Beats episode 1 will always stand out to me for storytelling.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about High School of the Dead, I think, is it has that, it had that ability to tell a story. But anyway,
just one more point. Sorry, it did so many things right, but did so many things wrong at the same time. Yeah, so it's really hard to define it.
Right.
But
So,
anyway,
so like you say, it kind of sits in that limbo. But yeah, I think those are great points. So, anything else we want to talk about? I think we covered the topic very well.
I haven't heard Zan's personal classics yet.
Well,
Mine's too obvious.
You're right.
You mean Gurren Lagann?
No.
Go ahead, Zan.
Okay, well, I would like to say that each classic, I know classics are accidental, but each one has a message. Mobile Suit Gundam, serious mecha can be done.
Yeah.
SDF Macross, romance in mecha is good, just don't have the love triangle happen at the very end.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, Akira. Having 2 guys shout each other's name is manly.
That's the point.
Everything. Another good classic message: Trigun.
Don't trust your brother.
That. But comedy and seriousness can be done.
Yeah.
Just do intertwining. Just do it like one at a time.
Yeah.
Exactly. Trying to think of anything else. Lupin the Third. Comedy is timeless. Comedy will always draw people together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, comedy and adventure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
and also,
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Brent.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna say, I was just gonna bring up Studio Ghibli films, like from the discussion earlier, because I've kind of been cut off a lot through this episode. Anyway, so with the Studio Ghibli, like Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away, I see Princess Mononoke as the bloody one, though I love it. It's great.
It is.
But it's memorized because it's the bloody one. That's why.
Yeah.
A big reason why. And Spirited Away, I have to say I'm probably like the one otaku who does not think Spirited Away should be as popular as it is.
Oh no,
Because everyone would say, it's so original. Okay, Spirited Away, for me, is a Japanese version of Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
That's exactly
why
what it is. Like, everyone bangs on Ponyo for being, it's the Little Mermaid. Like, it's not the Little Mermaid. There's no King Triton.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But it's the only one. People rag on Ponyo for being the Little Mermaid because it admits it's the Little Mermaid, because it says in the advertisement, inspired by. If Spirited Away had ever admitted in the adverts, inspired by Alice in Wonderland, no one would have said it's original, because it says we're inspired by this.
Exactly.
They're just sort of like, let it have its day in the sun kind of thing.
Yeah. But not only that, but also Alice in Wonderland, the Disney movie, is also pretty cult classic.
Which one?
The Disney version of Alice in Wonderland. It's not mentioned.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Like Little Mermaid, everyone knows about that. Alice in Wonderland, not a lot of people know about that.
Yeah,
so I think that's the reason why. I think that's even why they advertise for Ponyo, that inspired by Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
But not for Spirited Away.
Yeah, Alice in Wonderland is arguably as well known for the books, the original books, as the Disney film, which is kind of odd.
Well, with Ponyo, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think Spirited Away was only really a classic because of the timing. It was the Pixar push. That's the only reason it was classic. I don't think it didn't revolutionize storytelling. It didn't I review Spirited Away averagely. It's good. It has its messages. That's great. But it's only classic because it got the push. I mean, for example, Grave of the Fireflies didn't get the push, but it's the superior of all the Ghibli films, in my opinion.
That's a good point there. Spirited Away is totally different for me. Again, bringing up the point of personal classics, because it's what got me back into anime. Because I had a huge period of not watching anime, and then one day I was in a Kex, C-E-X shop. Forever I thought it was pronounced sex, which was funny. I honestly did. People just started calling it Kex, and I was like, why didn't I think of that? Anyway, there it was on the shelf, £5. I thought, I've got £5 extra from the game trade-ins, because I was trading in games to get Sims 3, because awesome game. And I had £5 spare, so I thought, get Spirited Away, why not? So I got Spirited Away, watched it. I need to watch anime again. Oh my god! So it's that thing about personal classics, and personal classics fog your vision of other classics.
Yeah.
I can't see Spirited Away as anything other than a brilliant, amazing film, because it's what brought me back to anime.
Yeah.
I owe it so much.
And also, to be fair to Spirited Away, I mean, I certainly agree that a lot of it was the timing, but there are very few films you could have put at that point and given that push, and it would have been as popular.
That's true.
Exactly.
It's everything that was into it. So, but yeah, I have personal classics that no one else has ever heard of, and that's fine because they're things that really spoke to me at the time. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, my two personal classics are Grave of the Fireflies, because I've only seen Grave of the Fireflies once. I have it on DVD. I bought it and I saw it once, and I never want to or need to see it again. I've seen it, I understand it, and I remember the entire film. I found, because it's so in your head. And the thing is that it's one of the things that, like, some people say the classics are the ones you can watch over and over again, and yes, that is the case with me in Phantom, and it's one of my classics. But my God, I've seen Grave of the Fireflies once. I never want to. I never have to see it again. And that's what made that classic. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, I don't know. And sometimes the classics are the ones that you don't know why you adore it. You just do. Phantom. I don't know why it's my favourite. Everyone keeps saying, why is it then? I don't know. Maybe it's just because it gives you, good advice. Don't shoot your girlfriend. But I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are things that just speak to us, and that's awesome too.
Well, Brent, just one more point on the thing that Miniman said about Grave of the Fireflies. A classic, one thing as well is a classic isn't something you want to watch all over and over again. It's something you don't need to watch over and over again because it's there.
In
it's
your brain.
always
Yeah.
in your
In your
brain.
head.
You don't need to watch
Yeah.
it. You don't need to sit down and watch it because you could be on the bus and watch any scene you want because it's there.
Yeah.
It will forever be in your psyche. It becomes physically part of your personality in a way.
Yeah,
that film is you.
I have I bought the soundtrack to the original Tron a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
And
Nice.
I put it in and played it. Every time I play it, I am watching the movie again.
Yeah.
It's there, and I am seeing it almost shot for shot. I am watching that movie again, and again, whether Tron is a true classic or not, for me, it's in my brain.
Well, I think we can agree that Tron is a classic.
Yeah.
It will
Cult, at least.
because it was one of the first films to use animation in the way it did, or graphics in the way it did. That's why it's a classic. Or again, you could say that's not a classic. It's one of the first. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
Actually, I think I just realized something. I think the classics are made from the hardcore people. Like, for example, movie buffs are the people who said that that movie that was said before, and I can't remember the name of it because I don't watch many movies. Citizen Kane is a classic. Us Otalku say that Akira is a classic. The hardcore people that decide the class. Geeks are the ones who said that Tron is a classic, and because of that, and since geeks are taking over the world, mind you, we have a sequel.
Yeah.
The geeks shall inherit the earth.
Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's not the
by way, I
meek,
just
it's
thought-
the geek.
Right. Exactly.
It's true.
Also, I thought of one more message from an anime. Big O. Don't make your villains vegetables.
True. Very true. And with that, I think we have covered the topic very, very well.
Dun, 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 dun.
There we are.
Well, the funny thing is, have we come up with a definition for classics?
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Well, I gave
So-
it halfway through the show, so I think that should be a start.
The only real definition we've got is classics will be remembered. That's kind of really the only definition.
And
that we've
do
come
the
up
test
with.
of time. Test of time, I
Test of
think.
time.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's remembered.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the same thing.
Right. So, as always, I want to thank my guests. Thank you, Matt, for joining us.
It's always a pleasure to entertain you people, and always a pleasure to be entertained by you three.
There we go. Thank you, Miniman, for joining us.
And remember, like it says, don't shoot your girlfriend. It doesn't help for the next 2 series.
There we are. And thank you, Zan.
Much obliged, much obliged. Also, if you want my Insta classic, that would have to be Fooly Cooley. Yeah.
That's one I got to think about. That's an interesting one.
Yeah,
All right.
that's fine.
All right. So thanks all for joining us. See you all next time.
Sayonara, bye bye.
See you again, this.